Imagine this, a farmer in Punjab walks to his field in the sowing season and finds no urea. Empty shelves at the cooperative society, WhatsApp groups exploding with panic. The government is scrambling. At the exact same time in China, the world's largest fertilizer producer, the factories keep running. No shortage, no panic, no crisis. How is this possible? One country is gasping for urea, the other is sitting on a mountain of it. This is not a story about bad monsoons or lazy farmers. This is a story about energy, chemistry, geopolitics, and two completely different national strategies. Today we are going deep into the fertilizer crisis of 2026, why India is suffering badly, how China largely escaped it, and what India is doing right now to secure its fertilizer future. Before we go into the crisis, you need to understand what urea is and how it's made. Urea is solidified natural gas. Here's how it is made. At step 1, you take natural gas and react it with steam at very high temperature. This produces hydrogen. At step 2, that hydrogen is combined with nitrogen from the air under extreme pressure and temperature to make ammonia. At step 3, ammonia is then reacted with carbon dioxide to produce urea. If you don't have reliable, cheap natural gas at step 1, the entire chain stops. This is the fundamental chemistry that decides whether a country can feed itself or not in 2026. Now, here is the critical difference between India and China. India is the world's second largest producer of rice and wheat. Agriculture is not just an industry here. It is identity, employment, and food security for 1.4 billion people. In early 2026, India faced a severe urea shortage because India's urea crisis in 2026 is not one problem. There are 4 problems hitting simultaneously. Domino 1, the geopolitical choke point. India imports nearly 30% of its finished urea and between 60 to 80% of its raw materials like ammonia and sulfur from the Persian Gulf. The Hormuz blockade didn't just slow these shipments, it physically stopped them. Even when the government has the budget to buy urea, the ships cannot reach Indian ports in time for the sowing season. Domino 2, the energy squeeze. Because the same West Asia conflict tightened gas supplies to India, the government faced an impossible choice in early 2026. Keep the lights on in cities or keep the fertilizer plants running. They choose cities. The Natural Gas Supply Regulation Order of 2026 placed fertilizer plants in a second-tier priority. The result, domestic urea production dropped by an estimated 800,000 tons per month. Domino 3, the China factor. Historically, when India ran short, China was the backup supplier. China, in starting 2025, severely restricted its own fertilizer exports to protect domestic food security. Urea exports from China to India dropped from millions of tons to near zero. The safety net was gone. Domino 4, the subsidy trap. And this one is psychological. The Indian government sells a bag of urea to farmers at a subsidized price of roughly 266 rupees, while the actual cost to the government is over 2000 rupees. When WhatsApp messages started spreading about shortages, farmers did what any rational person would do. They panic bought. Many bought 10 bags when they needed 2. Black marketers bought to resell. So there is physical stock in the country, but it is sitting in private godowns, not reaching fields. It is an artificial shortage built on top of a real one. But here is something crucial to understand. This crisis did not start with the 2026 Middle East conflict. That conflict simply made it catastrophic. Even before, India was already struggling. After COVID-19, global demand for electricity surged faster than gas production. Europe and Asia began outbidding each other for liquefied natural gas on the spot market. Indian fertilizer plants, which rely on imported gas, found it too expensive to operate. Many quietly shut down for maintenance. Then came the 2022 Russia-Ukraine war, which cut off cheap Russian and Belarusian potash, forcing India into emergency deals with Canada and Israel at high prices, draining the fertilizer subsidy budget early. And then China's exports restrictions starting in late 2021 removed what used to be India's most reliable backup. There was also the nano-urea transition gap. The government reduced traditional bag urea imports in anticipation of farmers switching to liquid nano-urea. But farmers were hesitant to change. The demand for traditional bag urea stayed high. And the physical shortage on cooperative shelves was made worse by a policy bet that was placed too early. By the time the Hormuz crisis hit, India's fertilizer system was already standing on one leg. On March 23, 2026, Prime Minister Modi made a rare unlisted statement in the Lok Sabha. He compared the Strait of Hormuz crisis to the COVID-19 pandemic. That comparison was deliberate. It was a signal to every state government, every ministry, and every farmer. This is a national emergency. Treat hoarding and black marketing of fertilizers the same way you treated oxygen theft during COVID-19. He then backed his words with a policy move. Fertilizer plants were elevated to priority sector 2 in the National Gas Supply Order, guaranteeing them at least 70% of required gas even if other industries go without. China is the world's largest urea producer, and in 2026, while India struggles, Chinese urea plants keep running. Why? Not because they are more virtuous, but because they prepared for war. Remember the chemistry we discussed for India? How urea requires natural gas and no gas means no urea? China has found a workaround. Instead of imported natural gas, China uses massive domestic reserves of coal through a process called coal gasification. Burning coal in a low oxygen environment, they produce a mixture of hydrogen and carbon monoxide called syngas. From that syngas, they extract hydrogen, and the rest of the urea making process is the same. Because China has its own coal, Chinese urea plants keep running even if the Strait of Hormuz closed completely. They do not need Middle Eastern gas. They are immune to the very crisis that is threatening India, Europe, and America. Yes, coal-based urea is significantly dirtier. It produces roughly twice the CO2. But in 2026, China has made a very clear choice: food security over carbon targets. They will clean up later. Right now, they are securing the harvest. This is why while India faced empty fertilizer shelves, China faced no major domestic urea crisis. But China has one structural weakness: potash. It must import massive quantities to sustain its agricultural yields. Historically, a large portion came from Russia and Belarus, now under Western sanctions. Here is where China's geopolitics gets elegant. Instead of suffering from those sanctions, China leveraged the Ukraine crisis to deepen its partnership with Moscow, locking in highly discounted, guaranteed overland rail deliveries of Russian potash that bypasses Western shipping routes entirely. A global crisis turned into a bilateral advantage. So far, we have seen the depth of India's crisis. How a war far away in the Middle East, China's export restrictions, and energy shortages nearly brought the sowing season to its knees. But here is the part that rarely makes it to the headlines. India is not just reacting to the crisis. India is responding strategically. Let me show you what the government is actually doing to secure the country's fertilizer future. Not for one season, but for the long term. Massive diversification of supply sources. This is the first and most visible shift. India has systematically expanded its fertilizer import sources from just 27 countries a decade ago to 47 countries today. Think about what that means. Earlier, India was heavily dependent on the Persian Gulf for both finished urea and critical raw materials like ammonia and sulfur. When the Strait of Hormuz became dangerous, that dependency became a national vulnerability. Now, India has built multiple backdoors through Morocco, Jordan, Canada, Russia, and several African and West Asian nations. This is classic risk management. Perhaps the most important long-term move India has made is with Russia. In April 2026, India fast-tracked a massive $2.4 billion joint venture at Toglati, which is in Russia, one of the largest fertilizer projects in recent Indian history. It is a 50-50 partnership between Russia's Uralchem group and Indian state companies. The plant will produce 2 million metric tons of urea per year. Crucially, the entire output is earmarked for India. This is not just an important deal. This is India creating a dedicated, reliable supply line that bypasses the volatile Strait of Hormuz entirely. It comes via a much safer northern route. On top of this, the government approved emergency imports of 2.5 million tons of urea from Russia and other non-West Asian sources in late April 2026. This partnership shows India's new approach, moving from reactive spot market purchases to long-term strategic investments. Fertilizer is solidified natural gas, so India is also securing the gas itself. Look at what happened on May 15, 2026. Prime Minister Modi landed in Abu Dhabi to physically secure our energy buffers, signing a landmark deal with AD NOC to scale up the UAE's oil storage participation in India to a massive 30 million barrels. But this wasn't just about crude oil. It was an emergency safety net for our firms, guaranteeing long-term LPG and strategic gas reserves that completely bypass volatile shipping choke points. To back this up, the UAE committed an immediate $5 billion investment package straight into India's critical infrastructure, including major capital infusions by Emirates NBD and the Abu Dhabi Investment Authority. By cementing these physical hardware and energy buffers directly on Indian soil, diplomacy ensured that even if the Persian Gulf completely locks down, our domestic supply lines won't instantly freeze. Also, India triggered its ultimate domestic contingency. On May 13, 2026, the Union Cabinet greenlit a game-changing 37,500 crore rupee financial scheme aimed directly at unlocking our massive 401 billion ton national coal reserves. The goal is aggressive and highly specific: to gasify 75 million tons of domestic coal by turning it into syngas, which perfectly substitutes for the expensive imported natural gas we use to make urea. It is a massive structural gamble that mirrors China's playbook. using raw domestic chemistry to guarantee that even if West Asia goes dark, India's fertilizer plants and factories will absolutely keep running. At the same time, India is accelerating free trade agreement talks with the Russia-led Eurasian Economic Union. The goal is clear: diversify energy and fertilizer supply chain away from unstable regions and build stronger economic ties with the reliable partners. Domestic push and buffer building. Inside the country, the government has taken tough but necessary decisions. Fertilizer plants were elevated to priority sector 2 in the national gas supply order, guaranteeing them at least 70% of required gas, even if other industries go without. Prime Minister Modi shared numbers. Urea stocks up 19% over the previous year. DAP stocks doubled. NPK at record highs. The government's message: we saw this coming, we prepared. And the push for nano urea continues. A liquid fertilizer that requires far less volume and can reduce dependency on traditional imported bag urea. These steps shows a clear shift from panic management to structured resilience, long-term technological and systematic resilience. Beyond immediate fixes, India is building deeper strength through the AgriStack framework. The government is digitally mapping every plot of farmland. This enables direct rate, accurate crop insurance, and better demand forecasting for fertilizers. Combined with climate-resilient crop varieties and improved nutrient management practices, India is slowly moving from a system that depends on large volumes of urea to one that uses nutrients more efficiently. Let me put it plainly. India has learned the hard lesson of 2026. In the new world, fertilizer security is national security, just like energy security or defense. The old model of depending heavily on one region and hoping for the best is over. The new model is diversification, strategic partnerships, domestic technology push. It won't solve every problem overnight. Challenges remain: high subsidy burden, panic buying culture, and the need for faster adoption of new technologies. But the direction is clear. India is treating this crisis as an opportunity to fundamentally strengthen its agricultural backbone. And that, more than anything else, tells you how seriously the country is taking its food security in this new geopolitical age. We have now seen both sides of the story. If this video helped you understand why China largely escaped the urea crisis through coal gasification and how India is fighting back through diversification, bold partnerships, and long-term planning, do share it. Subscribe and turn on notifications. This is Amar. We go deep every week.